Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews. We have some news, but before we get into that, I just want to take a minute and ask you guys to make sure that if you like this type of content, that you hit that subscribe button, as well as the bell next to it to be notified of any videos I post here on the channel. And if you could do me a huge favor and give this video a thumbs up, that would help the channel out greatly. Anyway, on with the news. The very first thing that I have for you guys is actually quite a bit of news from Creative Beast Studio and the Beasts of the Mesozoic Tyrannosaur series. As you may or may not know, the Kickstarter is currently underway, and it has been an overwhelming success. They have not only funded the Kickstarter, but have reached numerous goals afterwards, so it's doing really well. And David Silva has been doing a great job of keeping us updated with lots of information on the Tyrannosaur series itself. And the very first thing that he has shown us here is actually an image of the Tyrannosaurs standing completely free of any bases or pegs or anything. This was a very large concern of his moving forward. He wasn't quite sure how he would actually go about creating the Tyrannosaurs in a way that they could stand without any type of like a peg or anything. Basically, he didn't want anything visibly holding the dinosaurs up. He wanted them to stand freely, looking really nice, and he didn't think that he'd actually be able to do this, but he basically came up with an idea to have interchangeable lower legs so that you could have the figures stand without the base, and to his surprise, they actually stand really nicely, and in his words, he says that the larger one actually stands even nicer than the smaller one, so the 1/18th scale version stands nicer than the 1/35th scale, but they both can balance, and this is great news for anybody that has been on the fence of potentially ordering some of these or already has. This is definitely something that I'm very excited about because it allows for a much nicer display of your Tyrannosaurs when they do officially release. And on top of that really awesome information from Creative Beast Studio, he's also given us a few new looks at some prototypes, one of which is the Dryptosaurus, which we can see here, a beautiful feathered type of a look to the majority of the figure, and of course an overall gorgeous sculpt on the part of David Silva. He is always providing us with fantastic images of the Tyrannosaur series as it progresses. He's really good at keeping us up to date on everything going on with the line, and I really love seeing the prototypes as they come out. I more so enjoy seeing the painted prototypes, but anytime we get an image of a new prototype, I'm really excited about it. And speaking of which, we also have a look at the Teratophonius prototype, and what's really interesting about this is he had initially posted these images here where you can see how the neck is kind of thin, and I guess a few people had complained about the thin appearance to the neck, so he actually revised it to make the neck a little thicker, which you can see in these new images of the Teratophonius. So that is definitely showing how David Silva continuously listens to his fans and always wants to give us exactly what we want. If he would go through the trouble of resculpting the neck just to make sure it looks as awesome as possible, and it honestly does look exactly that. It looks awesome. And the final new prototype that we have to take a look at here is the Chinsusaurus, and that as well is just gorgeous, and that's something that I don't think we'll ever hear anything else other than gorgeous when it comes to a Beasts of the Mesozoic Tyrannosaur series figure. I was a huge fan of the Raptor series, a huge fan of the Ceratopsian series, and this Tyrannosaur series looks to be my favorite of the bunch and definitely will be defeating the other two in pretty much every aspect, which is crazy to say because the other two series so far have been incredible, but this Tyrannosaur series looks to be potentially my favorite thing going on in the dinosaur collecting community. And then as far as PNSO goes, they continue to not only impress us but surprise us with some insanely awesome species that they create. As you can see here from these images, we have a Leviathan, and wow, is that ever a very cool species on the part of PNSO to release, and one that I certainly did not expect to get a release, but that's something that has been often said about PNSO, as they sometimes just really pull out the most obscure species that has never been created. I personally have never seen a model of this species, so that is really exciting in its own right, but again, I'm just so shocked that they decided to go this route and create one of these, but shocked in a very good way. This is definitely a model that I, for sure, will be picking up and adding to my collection, and one that I feel like many collectors will be excited about as well due to the lack of models of it. So as per usual, this will be available very soon on the Amazon PNSO store as well as the PNSO AliExpress store. So once it does go up for sale, make sure you head on over and pick one of these up for yourself. And then as far as Wild Past goes, they have recently updated their Instagram account to let us know that they will be having more 3D prints coming out from them very soon. As you know, they do have a Shapeways store with many different figures on there already, but it looks as though they have 2 alternate versions of the Tethys, which is really awesome because they recently have released a pair of these figures in their main line, so you can now get 2 others in different positions to kind of create an entire family of Tethys for your collection, and that, again, is something that I think Wild Past is really good at coming up with really cool ideas like this that most companies don't really utilize. Like once they release a figure of a certain species, they usually just move on to the next. But this is a really cool idea on the part of Wild Past to give us 2 more versions of this dinosaur that they've already released to kind of create your own herd. Super cool on their part, and I don't know exactly when this will be for sale, but once it is officially up for sale, I will let you guys know. And then as far as, and I don't exactly know how you say the name of the company, but it is spelled Eikoh, Miniature Planet, they actually have revealed some new figures coming from them, and there is a ton of absolutely awesome looking figures here that they are releasing, including ones like the dodo bird, and we also have a Dimetrodon. I really like the Dimetrodon. We've got an Irish elk, a Gigantopithecus, which is super cool because I don't recall anybody ever releasing a Gigantopithecus before. I mean, I'm not saying it hasn't happened, but I personally haven't seen one. And we also have many other figures here. Again, you see this image here showing off quite a few others that they will be releasing, like a giant moa and the Elasmotherium, so lots of awesome stuff coming from them. I'm not entirely sure when these will go up for sale, but I do believe they should be available on Amazon at some point when they are officially available for sale, and I personally intend on picking up quite a few, if not all, of these very cool figures. And then a huge shout out goes out to Dino Mike Mac on Instagram, who has actually supplied me with some really cool images here that show off quite a few of the upcoming Mattel Jurassic World figures, but from a few different angles that we previously haven't actually seen. One of which we have here is the Styracosaurus, which the Styracosaurus, is pretty cool. I love the species, but it's the 3rd time now that we've had this figure with a very similar paint scheme, although I will say that I think this one does look really quite nice, and I like the use of the green on this one, which is something that I don't think we've really seen on it before. But definitely a fun looking figure, not something I'm insanely excited about, but definitely something I will pick up when it does officially hit stores, or at least some online retailer. We also have the Machikosaurus here that you can see. Again, this is a much nicer version than the previous one, if you ask me. I really, really like the paint scheme on this version. In comparison to the older one, I definitely like this one better. A really nice flashy looking paint scheme, and we have paint that actually runs all the way out onto the tail, which is definitely very exciting if you ask me. So although we have had the figure before, and even though it's just a repaint, I think it's easily the superior of the 2 repaints, and something I can't wait to get in my hands and in my collection. We also have a look at the Sammy, Velociraptor, and Compy set. This one is kind of a generic set, if you ask me, because we really don't need more raptors from the Mattel line, and although I do like the fact that the Compies are alternate colors, it's nice to have at least a little difference when it comes to those, because they've honestly been released about 400 times now with the exact same color, so it is really cool to see a difference in color. But the star of the show here would be Sammy, and it's nice to have a figure of her finally. I was starting to think we weren't going to get her at all, but to my surprise we are. It's just that we have some kind of lame dinosaurs included in the set with her. And then we have a look at the Brooklyn and Monolophosaurus set, which the Monolophosaurus paint scheme does look quite nice, aside from the fact that it kind of looks like it was like walking in some mud or something like that. But yet again, just like the Monolophosaurus that I just reviewed, it has those extra large teeth, which I am not a fan of. I'm kind of hoping that Mattel will again re-release this figure at some point with a more natural look to the teeth on the upper jaw, because the teeth on this one are just obnoxiously large and almost ruin the entire figure due to how weird they look. But again, in my opinion, the star of the show for this set as well would be Brooklyn, just because she's a figure that we haven't had prior. It's nice to have, again, all of the human characters from the Camp Cretaceous show, or at least the main human characters, getting a release, and this is another that hasn't previously had one, so super excited to get a hold of Brooklyn as well. We also have a look look at the upcoming Darius and Brachiosaurus set, which we have seen again all of these figures prior, but we haven't had quite so many images of them, and I was a gigantic fan of this Brachiosaurus the first time around, so I'm psyched to get a hold of this greenish version just to have at least a few different Brachiosaurus in my collection. The paint scheme of this one definitely looks quite nice, and I feel like is going to be a perfect addition to the Brachiosaurus herd that I hope to one day have in my collection. So fingers crossed they'll release even more paint variants of this Brachiosaurus baby, because I love the sculpt, and it seems as though the paint applications that it gets tend to be really nice, as the first one was really beautiful, and this one as well looks really nice. We also again have Darius in the set, which isn't really anything that great, but it is nice to have some pretty fun extras with Darius this time around. And we also have a look at the Tanystropheus, which this one, is a little weird. I'm not a huge fan of the sculpt, but I will say that it definitely looks better in these newer images than it had in the initial image that I had seen of it, and it really does look kind of decent in the in-box image here, but it looks more like a movie monster style Tanystropheus than an actual Tanystropheus, but it still looks pretty fun, looks to have some nice articulation and an okay looking paint scheme, so easily a figure I will be on the hunt for, because again, it's a Tanystropheus in the Jurassic World line. That's awesome enough. Even if it's not the best version of it, it's definitely something I can't wait to get a hold of. And the final one we have is the Allosaurus here. We have a few new images of the Allosaurus as well, again showing off that this one looks really nice. It might be my favorite out of all of the Mattel Allosaurus when it does officially release. I feel like the paint scheme of it just looks so nice and natural on the figure overall. Beautiful tones of color used, and of course the sculpt is really nicely done. So this is certainly one of my most anticipated figures, I would say, for the Mattel line, but certainly not my most, which would be the Kentrosaurus and Pentaceratops, but definitely as far as repaints go, this one's at the top of the list. So as of right now, guys, that's all the news I've got. When more comes out, I'll be sure to send it your way, but until then, please like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.